Okay, we're going to open our agenda for the Architectural Board of Review for September 20th of 2021 and start with our roll call.
All right, thank you, board members. This is Mary. I'll go ahead and take the roll call, and I'll start with Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Stick.
Yeah, totally.
Here.
Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Block.
Here.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whalen.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we're going to open public comment.
Is there a way to like?
If any member of the public would like to address the board or any subject within our jurisdiction that is not on today's agenda, you can follow the instructions on screen and raise your hand, and I'll notify staff that you would like to speak.
It's right.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do have two members of the public that have joined the webinar. If you would like to speak and make a general public comment, could you please click the raise your hand button, and then we'll call on you and you'll have 2 minutes to speak to the board. At this time, I don't see that any member of the public has raised their hand indicating that they would like to speak. Mary, have we received any general public correspondence for the board?
Thank you, Christina, and board members. We did not receive any general written correspondence for today's agenda. Back to you, board members.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to approval of the minutes for September 7th.
So moved. Second.
First, and second by Mr. Olson. Any discussion?
Further discussion, Chair Moore, on item number 1, under the motion, item number 2, it should read, it reads further development of the effective elevations. It probably should read further development of the elevations affected by the new roof line.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I think that was the intent of the comment.
That would be it.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay, let's take our vote, please.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Stick.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Noon.
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and then moving on to the consent calendar.
yeah.
for
May I
13th.
interrupt?
Oh, Go
May,
ahead.
may I interrupt? There's somebody, and I'm getting a lot of chatter on the background. I don't know who it is, but, it's, distracting. So if people have somebody in their background speaking, would they turn their mic off when they're not in use, please?
Okay, yeah, and if anybody else is a part of this hearing is unmuted, right now we just need the board members to be speaking and hearing each other, so everybody else can mute themselves. Thank you. And, okay, so moving on to September 13th, please. We could have those up.
Move we accept as presented.
All right.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Black.
Yeah.
Any discussion? No discussion. Let's take our vote then.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sick,
Yeah,
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now September 20th.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Today's consent calendar was reviewed today by Board Members Olson and Board Members Noon. 128 East Montecito Street received project design approval and final approval as submitted, with the no visual impact finding and the project compatibility analysis being met. Second item today was 17 South Milpas Street, and that item received a indefinite continuance for the applicant to submit appropriate plans, including photo simulations at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a,
Move we accept as presented.
okay, first by Olson,
Second.
second by Noon. Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take our vote, please.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sick,
yes,
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, now any announcements, requests by applicants, any future agenda items or appeals?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do have a few announcements that I'd like to make. The first is involving board member absences. Board Member Whalen will not be in attendance on the November 1st or November 15th full board hearings. Board Member Olson will not be in attendance on the October 4th and October 11th consent calendar hearings. Board Member Whalen is actually going to be handling the absences from Board Member Olson. They did a little swap, so that the consent calendar will be filled with reviewers on those days. I also have an additional announcement regarding that you should have received an email from Ms. Inzueta about ABR Advisory Board recruitment. At this time, if any board members are feeling like they would like to resign from the board, we're giving you notice that it needs to be done before Friday, September 24th. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to fill the position. And that's all I have for announcements.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with announcements?
Yes, I have a conflict of interest today on this second item on our agenda, and we'll leave the meeting after the first.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, Chair Moore, I have a conflict on the first item on the agenda. So I'll mute myself and turn off the camera for that one.
All right, thank you. Any subcommittee reports at this time?
Mr. Chair Moore, the subcommittee or the work group for the Santa Barbara multifamily design standards had their first meeting last week, and we have a very capable and talented group, and looking forward to their work and input.
Great. Good to hear. All right. Well, if that's it for general business, we can move on to our first item. Please. So this is item number 1, just 2407 Bath Street. This is a continued item. It's here for in progress review. And it's a proposal for a new 2-story, 27,000 square foot pediatric medical office building with a 2-level, 46,000 square foot subterranean parking garage. Project proposes to merge 2403 Bath Street, 2407 Bath Street, 310 East Nipro, and 314 Bath Street. Properties. All existing buildings and development would be demolished. 3 oak trees are proposed to remain and be incorporated into the new landscape plan. Project received City Council designation as a community benefit project on October 3rd of last year. An in-progress review is requested. The project received Planning Commission approval of a development plan and 2 setback modifications on February 11th. The project was last reviewed by ABR on February 22nd. When project design approval was granted. I think that's it for the intro. Our comments are on the screen. You can review those quickly. So it looks like some roof design with mechanical equipment, detailing of window headers and jambs and sills, details for roof eaves, detailing proportions of a large window at the front entry, details of railings and other site accessories, exterior lighting, detailing of breaks and wall planes surrounding the entrance. Okay. And then proposed materials for trash gates and exterior accessories. Okay. All right, we have our applicant here. If you could introduce yourself and walk us through your updates.
Chair Moore, members of the board, Brian Cornell, thank you. Board member Noon really does have a conflict of interest here since he is the project architect on this, so I expect you all to be very hard on us to make sure that it's meeting the standard. I will go through some of these items. I'm not sure I have the information just yet as far as the mechanical equipment, but it is all below the parapet, so we will be able to demonstrate that to you. The big change I want to start with is the fact that we have needed to add height to the building because of mechanical and structural clearances to achieve the minimum height of 9 feet in these exam rooms. So we provided an exhibit that I think should be available to us, Mr. Bolton. Yes, thank you. So the top image shows the elevation that you all gave PDA approval to, and the lower elevation is illustrative of what we are proposing today. There is an 18-inch difference. The first floor to floor, did not change. It was the second floor to floor or floor to ceiling that changed, and so that 18 inches really manifests itself in that upper band. So you can get a sense of it from here, but what I want to talk about is just to show you the detailing of the eave and how we are dealing with that, because we've never talked about that detailing. So maybe we should, now that you can kind of see that comparison, and by the way, I'm pretty sure that you all have the PDA set. If you need to look at it, if you really want to do more comparisons, Mr. Bolton can call that up. But Mr. Bolton, let's go to, I think it's the 13th PDF. It's A201, which are the elevations. So on the, maybe we should zero in on the top elevation first. So you can see that on this particular, at this entry element, we've added a little banding underneath the eave detail. We've also created a little bit more articulation with that central entry element. And the other thing that we've done is we've added a little header detail, which I'll show you at the first floor windows, just to kind of improve their proportion. We've also introduced a molding. You can see on the far right, there's a molding detail. Before, we were just carrying that that break in the building plane between the first and second floor around, and having really no parapet detail, but we've opted to add a little bit of a molding detail along that. If you'll scroll down just a little bit, Mr. Bolton, we've added to this elevation, we've added that same molding detail. It's sort of faded out a little bit, but there at the far end where you see the little note number 9 in the middle, that element also has that same molding detail. They're in the middle of the, yes, exactly, up at that level there. The only other change here is there's been a slight change to the trash enclosure, which I don't think really is much to note. And we also relocated that service door entrance, essentially one bay over, so that there's a slight revision in that as well. What I would suggest we do is go to A601, which is PDF 25, I believe, and look at some of the details, because that's really what I wanted to show you. Maybe Mr. Bolton, zero in on the bottom 2 details. So to begin with, there's one mistake on this detail. One of the things we decided to do is, because of the size of the building and the eave, for this half round gutter to be 8 inches rather than 6 inches. So that just simply is we just didn't make that revision, but it will become just a larger element, which I think is really important for the scale of the building. The typical eave detail here is what would surround the building. So these are 4x8s that are at 24 inches on center, as you can see. And then an additional piece that is basically added at the bottom, a 4x4 that would be scabbed onto that 4x8 to create the proper section to this eave. So we have thickened this element from what we first drew on PDA, and then we've added that little 1.5 or half round detail that would be at the base of that. For the tower, we've extended or added basically 4 inches to that overhang. And then we've added another one of those half round details just to kind of give that entry element a little bit more detail, a little bit more of a top to it. We can zero out a little bit of this or pull out to look at some of the other details. So if we look in the upper left-hand corner at those 4 details there, so the detail at the top left is basically the wainscot detail that would be at that entry element. The detail below it is the typical break in the building between the first and second floor. So that's just a very simple little stepped detail. The detail to the, detail number 14 is that parapet that I was mentioning that we added on those few little flat roof elements. And then we're pretty much repeating that as the cap to the surround at the entry element. Let's see, we'll zero back, go ahead and go back out again. I think you can see the typical flare detail, which is a fairly typical detail that we're doing at the rake condition, which there aren't many. We just have those stair towers, which have the rake conditions, so it's fairly sparingly used. And let's go to the next page, Mr. Bolton. So on the far left, those two details, that illustrates the thickness of the opening at the first floor and the second floor. So the detail 5, you can see that the minimum recess for the windows at the second floor will be 5 inches. And then basically the detail at the first floor openings will be that additional thickness of another 4 inches as a result of that plane break. Detail 8, 9, and 10 above it really it shows the large window that's at the rear of the building that you see when you're coming down the ramp. So that's a particularly deep recess window because it's facing to the south. And that's the corbel. Detail 8 is basically the corbel that sort of supports that cantilever of that element. So that illustrates, I think if we scroll backwards through the pages, Mr. Bolton, wanted to see if there was anything else of importance here to review with you all. We don't have any landscape plans at this point. Yeah, go ahead and keep scrolling more. I should say there have been no changes in the landscape since we met with you last. This section, by the way, if you go back to that just kind of illustrates, and it's interesting from a grading standpoint, those are the 2 levels of parking below, and then the trash enclosures that are basically up at grade level, and then the transition to the left there of how we make the grade change to the adjoining property line. And I think I will stop there and open it up to questions. Again, this is just in progress. Anything we fail to cover today was on those minutes. We can pick up at our next review, but I wanted to make sure that you all were comfortable with the 18-inch change and also the detailing to the extent we have it for today's review. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. With that, we will open public comment for this item. If anybody in the public would like to address the board about this specific project, you can raise your hand by following the instructions on screen.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do see many members of the public logged into the webinar. I think most of those are here for the second item. I don't see that anybody has raised their hand to make a public comment on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence on this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did not receive any written correspondence for this item. Back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, then we will close public comment and go to questions from the board. Who would like to start? So, Leon, is that you?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Detail number 17 on page A601. Can you tell me where that occurs? Show me where that occurs? You're muted, Mr. Kernall.
I'm sorry, Mr. Olson, I was busy looking on my own set. So detail 17, is that the question?
Yes.
So that is the top of that entry surround at that main articulated entrance. So you can see it detailed right there.
Yes.
And then it's probably worthwhile, one thing I did not show you is 16 A601. So maybe since, you know, with that question, just to make sure we understand what that scallop detail is at that surround is back at detail 16601, Mr. Bolton. So we opted to do this, what I think will be a very elegant inward sweep of that surround as shown. So that's the head and the jamb detail at that condition.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
All right, who's next?
Chair Moore?
Go ahead.
Yes, could we, I don't know what page it would be, but could we see the long elevation, the long, what is it?
Yeah, it's A202, the 14th PDF. There we go.
On the, oh gosh, the east elevation, you have a balcony and a door. And would it be just kind of serendipity to introduce one of those as a kind of a serendipity item? Very minor, but it might loosen this up a bit.
So are you saying to break up the regularity of those, what are there, 8 windows along there, something where we would introduce a door or something different?
Yeah, like you do on the, what is, so just something that's subtle that would break the rhythm. It's only a suggestion,
Okay.
but I think that, you know, if there's some, you know, just very serendipitously do that. And my only other comment would be if we look at the east elevation front, and it's very, very, very minor. You know, the front, it would seem to me that right above the door before the clear story window, that you could have a additional thickness of header there. So it just looks like those windows come down around the door. Yeah, right there.
Absolutely agree. Good point. Absolutely. No question. We're going to want that. We'll need it.
But yeah, but other than that, I think it's brilliant, very nicely designed, and I do not. Are we in questions or?
Yes, questions.
I'm sorry. I'll hold my comments until the end.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with questions? Well, while we're on this view, tell me, Mr. Connell, can you tell me, as you come through the main entry doors, is this like a double height volume with inside, or is there a floor right above your head?
No, the floor is held back to where there is a volume there at that large window, and it'll be a railing, you know, there'll be a railing detail. You know, we're in the middle of, Perkins and Will is actually doing the interiors and the space plan of this, and we're in the middle of arguing about, they want to do a sort of a large winding or circular stair there, and I really want the stairway to be more in keeping with the architecture, as if it was always there, regardless of what happens in the future for the interior. So we're in the throes of discussing that, but yes, it is a 2-story volume in front of this glass.
Well, I asked that just in relationship to the scale of the doors. Does it seem that they're a little small for something of this type of entry?
Well, I'm probably, this isn't showing the actual ground level, unfortunately, because the road is, so they sort of look shorter. They are 8-foot doors. I would not be opposed to studying, maybe the header idea that Board Member 6 mentioned will do some of the work, but I wouldn't be opposed to looking at a 9-foot door, something with a little more scale to it. I think it's a good suggestion.
It sort of strikes me as, because the window head heights on either side are kind of driving a datum, so to speak. So,
Okay.
and then, so tell me a little bit more about the 18-inch height increase. Where does that present itself? Is this above the second floor windows where it grew, or is it?
Yes, it is. So the finished floor at the first floor did not change. But one thing that we did do is add that little header detail that I showed you there on top of the first floor windows, just to sort of improve their proportion with what happened up above. But it is primarily in that space between the window top or this entry element top and the actual eave itself.
And the second floor window heights didn't increase, like the dimensions
Well,
of the window?
we increased them as much as we could, but we can only go up to that 9-foot ceiling height. So that's where we're unlimited.
Okay. And then if we can go back to your exhibit, sort of comparing the heights. So we zoom in on the left side of the large elevations. Okay. Mr. Whalen, you had some questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. Could you go back to the previous image, Mr. Bolton, that detailed that eastern main entry? A question for Mr. Kernal, if you could know the one that showed the entire elevation, please. Mr. Kernal, it may just be a drawing error, but it appears that there are different shadow depths for the windows. As you can see on the left, there appear to be one dimension, and on the right, there are a different one.
I'm going to blame that on the computer is what I'm going to blame that on.
So there is a consistent window depth.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then the main doors that Chair Moore was referring to, is that just one large pane of glass with a rail surround?
That was the intent.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Chair Moore.
Go ahead.
Additional. Ms. Bell, did you consider likewise the same header at the upper story windows in order to reduce that height between window, top of window to eave?
I did, but again, what I was most concerned about was sort of what that did to the proportions. When I did that, those lower windows became much squattier and the upper windows became very elongated. So that's why I didn't do that detail. I would probably be inclined, if I did a detail up there, for it to be different, that instead of it being that innie, I'll call it, that I've got for the lower windows, I'd probably have something that came out a little bit and gave it a little bit of an eyebrow if you felt it was necessary. Another option, if that space between the windows and the eave is bothering you, another option is to do that kind of banding as I'm proposing at the entry, and then do even more of a elaborate band at the entry element to, basically to, make the two be different. But that would be another way to maybe help that condition, that little half-inch round, in other words, that we have, or half-round detail that we have.
Okay.
Mr. Black, you had a question? Oh, you're muted. You're still muted.
Thank you. Just, I guess, more of an observation. So in the PDA elevation, east elevation, seems to be a difference between that and the drawings I'm seeing today of the window breakups. Was there a change, or did that just come out of comments from the last meeting? I don't remember. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, there is a change in that to where they're broken into 3 sections as opposed to 2. I don't remember if that came from you all or if that just came from us looking at the size of these windows and the breakups.
Okay, that's all. Just an observation, but no question. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Before we go to comments?
I just want to note that.
Okay, let's go to comments then.
How the slab,
Who would like to start? Mr. Olson, go ahead.
I think it's a handsome building. I think it's improved from last time, especially on the entrance door. I am in tune with Mr. Six's comment about interrupting the regularity on, I guess that was the south side. And I would say that also on the front elevation, and what Mr. Kernal has already said he's considering as a band between the second floor and the third floor windows. I think that is deserving of some continued thought. Those are all of my comments.
Okay. Who's next? Mr. Whalen. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Chair Moore. I really appreciate the design's evolution. Every time we've seen it, seems to get better and better. And part of me wants to see this go on forever, but I think you're very, very close to a fine design, especially the main entry details. And I'm going to take a position opposite Mr. Six and Mr. Olson. I appreciate the detail and scale and changes that are happening at the main entry to differentiate them from the other elevations, and that landscape will be the feature element with the building just acting as a background as they are without further elaboration on those elevations. I would encourage the front doors to reflect more of the small scale of the window divisions that are happening around it, that as it is now, it appears as a kind of a retrofit to a classic Spanish colonial revival inspired building. Thank you. That's all of my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Moore?
Yes, go ahead.
I would echo the compliments on the fine direction and design this is going. I do not have a problem with the increased height. I do, however, think that it's kind of, you're kind of in a half step here in between. It started off with a very crisp, almost no molding finesses anywhere with the first design, and I'm negative. I think that the refinement of the moldings and so forth, especially ease and things, and the surround and so forth, are very nice. But I think that you just got just a little bit more, like a very, very minor quarter round or whatever at the depth change of the walls at the sills at the second story windows. We talked about, some, I don't know whether a molding at the top of the windows on the second floor is appropriate, but I do like the idea of additional molding under the eave. So I think that you've stopped halfway, and I think it'd be really fine to see there's very minor finesses on these corners and these edges to take it to a really good place. I did suggest a serendipity balcony. I think that the only side that I think needs it is the long, what is it, south elevation. Just maybe one there on that row of 8. I don't, other elevations need to be just one as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. And I do support the comments that look at larger doors and bigger header at the entry, at the entry fenestration. But other than that, I think it's very handsome. We did not talk. I think it's purview. I don't know whether Mr. Cannell is ready to talk about the exterior lighting. Maybe that comes later.
Mr. Six, we need to find that fixture. So I think the important thing is maybe for you all to comment on the scale that we've drawn there. I think that fixture is about 2 feet or so in depth, but we have not picked the actual design yet.
Okay. And the exterior lighting is limited to decorative lanterns at the walls and nothing else, no uplighting or significant landscape lighting?
Well, we have not talked about any landscape lighting. I'm imagining that all of the, at the entry pathway and stairways are all going to be step lights in those stone walls. And that otherwise we really will have very limited lighting, but we'll need to study that more and make sure that Cottage is satisfied from a security standpoint. But at this point, no intention to do any landscape lighting, but
I think part of my comments on lighting then would be to take a careful look at the lighting in the big void going down the parking lot. That could be a very harsh lit area, and I think it will be a challenge to make it glow and not feel too austere.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else with comments? No? Okay. I think I am in line with Mr. Whalen and his comments and suggestions. And other than that, I don't have anything to add. So if we're all done, we do need a motion. If somebody is willing to take a crack at that, would be great.
So I guess I'll venture in and say that the motion would be for the project to return to full board for final design review. The number two, that the in progress of the design is very acceptable and appropriate and is moving in the right direction. Number three, that well, I will make my opinions on the motion and see if it doesn't fly. That the applicant should continue to provide very refined and restrained moldings to reflect the ones recently entered. One molding perhaps at the bottom wall change at the bottom of the second story windows. At B of that same item would be study further moldings under the eaves to help reduce the increase in height between second floor header and eave, and perhaps and C, even stronger molding statement at the entry roof. A new item would be to study introducing a serendipity balcony at the south elevation in and amongst the 8 repeating windows on that elevation. A new item to restudy the entry fenestration and doors, giving doors more height, adding a header to visually support the windows above, and perhaps another more refined door type than a one light rail door. And finally, the board looks forward to seeing the solution to the lighting of the interior descending drive. I think that is it.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olson. Under discussion, did we mention anything about the height change? Other than saying the design is acceptable?
I think that I think one an additional sentence in the first item of the motion would be that with the introduction of additional moldings under the eave, that the height increase of 18 inches is acceptable.
Second agrees.
Okay. Can we show the previous minutes just to make sure things haven't dropped off the list? We did discuss materials for trash gates, railings. Just want to make sure we capture anything.
That's a very good point. I think that we should carry forward item 1A to still confirm the relationship between the parapet and the roof equipment. And what about the trash? Yes, and to carry 1H also.
Okay, and how about one E?
1E detailing, oh, yes, okay.
Okay.
Second agrees.
All right. Let's read that back really quickly if that's all of our discussion.
All right, thank you. This is Mary. I'll go ahead and read it back. So the motion is to continue the project indefinitely back to the full board with the following comments. Number one, the progress of the design is very acceptable and appropriate and moving in the right direction. The applicant shall continue to provide refined moldings to reflect the moldings at the bottom of the second story windows. Study providing further moldings under the eaves to help reduce the increase in height between the second floor header and eave. An even stronger molding statement at the entry roof should be provided. And lastly, with the introduction of additional molding under the eave, the height increase of 18 inches is acceptable. Number three, study introducing serendipity balcony at the south elevation amongst the repeating windows on that elevation. Number four, restudy the entry fenestration and doors. Provide more height, adding a header to visually support the windows above, and perhaps provide a more refined door type than the one light rail door. Number five, the board looks forward to seeing the solution to the lighting on the interior descending drive. Number six, the applicant still needs to confirm the relationship between the parapet and roof equipment mentioned in the minutes from the last meeting. Number seven, applicant still needs to address and show the proposed materials for the trash gates and exterior accessories as mentioned in the last meeting minutes. And number eight, item 1E from the previous meeting minutes still needs to be addressed. But I didn't catch what that bullet said specifically.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Anybody else?
So yeah, applicant shall show detailing of the railings and other site accessories.
I have a question.
Yes, really quickly.
Just really quickly, I didn't understand Mr. Six, the comment about the sill of the second floor window, because that I don't really want to change that because that has that very special relationship to that band, that built out plinth of the building. So were you thinking of adding some detail at the actual sill of that window?
No, at the upper, at the top corner of where it extends out. Yes?
Yes, but I thought it said the bottom. I thought the motion said the bottom of the window. That's why I'm asking.
I was just locating the change of a wall plane there.
Okay.
So I was locating it, but the molding would be continuous with that wall break.
Okay. It's a little confusing to me as well, but is there a better way to say that?
Well, okay, if we can go down to the details, yeah, right here, detail 15. Mr. Cornell, if you correct me, this is the wall plane that we're talking about, correct?
That is the wall plane that we're talking about. And at the second floor, that slope that you see, it continues to the window sill. So it's all aligned perfectly. And that detail isn't shown clearly, but if we go to the next sheet, it actually is alluded to.
Yeah.
So that angle is the same.
If we go back to 15, I'm suggesting that there's just a little quarter round or something where the 3/4 inch reinforced radius is, right there. Something that Just a minor lip or something.
Hmm. Okay, we'll study it.
All right. Okay, so if there's no more discussion, we can take our vote, please.
All right, thank you. This is Mary. I'll go ahead and take the roll call vote, and I'll start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that closes out item number 1. And before we jump into item number 2, I'd like to take a 2-minute recess if we could, please. ABR is September 20th, and move on to item number 2. Right, which is 201 East Haley Street. And this is a new item. This is a pre-application review. And this is a project consisting of constructing a 34,650 square foot, 4-story, 48 unit mixed use building comprised of 8 studio units, 32 1-bedroom units, 8 2-bedroom units, and approximately 6,632 square feet of commercial retail space on the ground level, intended for 5 to 7 businesses. The residential units range in size from 428 to 744 square feet, with an average size of 507 square feet. Rooftop pool, gym, and amenities are proposed, as well as grading and landscaping. 63 vehicle parking spaces and 52 bicycle parking spaces are proposed. The project site is a 26,771 square foot vacant lot, and proposed development will be 78 dwelling units per acre. And the project is designed to comply with the city's average unit size density incentive program, California State Density Bonus Program, and Streamlined Housing Project Program. Development plan approval at Planning Commission is required for the project. This is a one-time pre-application consultation. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Okay, before we jump in, I imagine staff has some things they'd like to say. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I just wanted to make it known to the board and the public as well that this project is in for just a one-time pre-application review at ABR. There has not been any zoning check on the project, nor verification of density, no environmental review, no transportation review, and certainly no comments from the land development team. The applicant team, they are required to do a pre-application review, and they have started that process. However, comments aren't back in for that yet. So the applicant really has chosen to do this one-time pre-concept review for the project. And so there will be no motion today. It will just be either each board member, a summary of each board member's comments, or if the board is in agreement, just one person can summarize the whole board's comments. So it'll be at the pleasure of the board if we go around and each board member will make comments, or if one person will summarize.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we have our applicant, I believe. All right. Introduce yourself and take us through your project, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Moore and board members. Good to see you all. It's been a while since I've seen most of you. I'm Clay Arell. I'm architect with AB Design Studio. And we have a couple other members of the team with us listening in. Vincent Mocha, who's a architect in our firm. Matthew Taylor, one of the developers, is also on the line. And I'll just kind of take you through the project here. I know we're here for a one-time kind of test the waters with ABR on this project. And as Christina just outlaid for you, So we have here, I've got two monitors going, so I'm going to look away from time to time, and that's only because I have a bigger monitor with the plans here. But on the cover sheet, this just basically has a lot of the project data and project information. The project's on the corner of Haley and Santa Barbara Street, which is the old Mission Linen site. If you're familiar with that, that site's been vacant for many, many, many years. In fact, I think it was vacant when I first moved here 23 years ago, and has continued to be vacant. They've done remediation on the site many years ago, and it's been deemed complete. So the site is now at a point where it can be developed. Our project is a mixed-use project as described in the project description. And we have a, give me 1 second. As Chair Moore read out, we're doing a mixed-use development of about 48 units. We have about 6,600 square feet of retail space on the ground floor. This property had roughly 17,000 or 16,000 square feet of commercial space prior, so we're using those development rights to go forward. And we're doing the AUD process here, and our average unit size is about 587 square feet. So we're doing smaller units. The goal here is to provide smaller, more affordable type units for the community, more workforce style housing in an area that is in the zone of benefit. It's in the CBD. It's very close to downtown, only a couple blocks off of State Street, with lots of amenities in the area. So the hope is to have it be very walkable and a good project for the future of the area. We can go to the next page, please. On the bottom right, you'll see a key map that is an aerial photo that shows where these photos on the rest of the page are taking from. Context photo number 1 is the corner looking at the property, looking down Haley to the right and up Santa Barbara Street to the left. As you kind of march around, photo 2 is looking westerly on Haley. Photo 3 is looking down Santa Barbara Street from the northern portion of the property on the left. And context 4 photo is looking up Santa Barbara Street, and 5 is looking down Haley. 8 is the adjacent building nearby on the next adjacent property. The property in context photo 8, the blue buildings on the right side of the photograph there is being slated with another development. You'll see that in a minute. Context photo 7 is the commercial property to the north of our property, where Arcadia Studios is. And then context photo 6 is looking catty corner to the repair tire shop across from our site. We'll go to the next page, please. Again, a larger aerial photo of our site. So we have East Haley running from the lower left to the upper right part of the image, and Santa Barbara Street running the other direction. Next slide, please. Great. Here we have our ground level plan. We have Haley Street on the right and Santa Barbara Street on the left. We have a pull-in garage that is flanked by commercial. So the commercial wraps Santa Barbara Street and a little bit on the corner and then down Haley. We have some areas to the north. You'll see a stairwell and some vapor system. It says vapor mitigation system. So we have some equipment on site that's being installed, and we're going to be relocating that in an appropriate area and enclosing it so it's not out in the open. And then we have trash and mechanical, bike storage areas and utilities and so forth. All the parking will be pulled in underneath, podium level parking. We are showing stackers in here, as well as a couple ADA spots and general parking for the rest of the commercial and units. We are in the CBD, so we're parked at 1 per 500 and one per unit on the AUD. Next slide, please. So at the second level plan, we're showing a mix of units throughout the project. A lot of one bedrooms is the most common unit we're proposing on the project. We have a couple 2-bedroom units on the corners and some studio units mixed in. The goal is to create an interior courtyard that's heavily vegetated, landscaped, and accesses the units back and forth. We're of course offsetting or setting back on the sides for light and air, as well as for fire protection. But our goal is to try to create a nice courtyard type project down the middle there. Next slide, please. As we move up to the 3rd level plan, one of the things we really want to do is trying to break the building apart. So you'll see on the Santa Barbara and Haley corner, which is the bottom right of the image, we don't have a unit there. We've actually stacked them differently so that that corner can open up, as well as the corner to the north, or I'm sorry, bottom left of the image. And then we have another area, which is another patio on the upper portion of the image as you see it there. And these were just really created to create intended to create outdoor spaces for the tenants to use, common areas for them to use. We'll program them as we develop the project further, but the initial idea was just have these areas that help break up the mass of the building and also create different locations for people to relax and hang out and do different things. Next slide, please. As we get up to the roof level plan, effectively the 4th floor, we've located a lot of common areas up there. We've got a pool, we've got a gym and fitness areas and pool equipment and stuff like that. We've also got some other roof decks and other areas to congregate and for a common space. And then we have a handful of units on the top. Most of these are oriented to take advantage of the mountain views to the Riviera beyond. And they're all also pulled back away from Santa Barbara Street and Haley Street intentionally so that we can keep the mass away from the public views and public streets. You can see the open courtyard down below. One of the things that we're dealing with on this project is this project is going to be a tier 4 project under SWAMP, which has pretty heavy requirements in terms of water collection, slowing down water rates, and retention. So part of our design in our upper level design is really trying to be able to capture and direct water down through the building and filter it through planters and different things so that when we get to the ground floor, we've helped mitigate the amount of water, stormwater coming off the building. So that's another reason why we've integrated a lot of planters into the design. We're very early in the stages. We don't have all those calcs figured out yet, but we're trying to think ahead, if you will, and plan for that. Next slide, please. So because we're here for a really, simple review with you guys, initial review, we've done 2 elevations here. So we've got the Haley Street elevation on top and the Santa Barbara Street elevation on the bottom. And so we're doing sort of a Spanish style view of our approach to the building, also trying to keep it a little bit contemporary in thinking, given that we have to do a lot of mitigation with stormwater. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to try to help design that into the elevation, if you will. The ground floor, you can see, has a series of storefronts and openings. We are showing street trees in the elevation along Santa Barbara Street. And most of those are existing from what I remember, as well as along Haley Street. And then you can see kind of the corner of Haley and Santa Barbara on the bottom right and the top left, where we've created that outdoor area with a little trellis above it. It's kind of a hangout spot on the corner. We've incorporated some red tile roofs here and there on the upper floors. That's, you know, we're kind of limited when we do that because we want to try to catch as much water as possible. So we've added some little details and elements around the building to that effect. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a perspective rendering, conceptual rendering here of the corner. This is looking at the corner of Santa Barbara Street and Haley. Again, you can see to the far right, the proposed project that is coming up at 219 Haley Street. That one's been approved by your board and is moving forward, as far as I understand, into permitting. And there's a property in between both our property and that property that you can see where the Love's Towing used to be. That's the small little building there next to the tree. And then as you move up Santa Barbara Street, you can kind of see the street trees and then the entry to the parking garage. This sort of element above the trellis is the elevator tower for the project. So that's why that has a little bit of height and mass to it. And then our building will set back 5 feet along Haley Street and Santa Barbara Street. It's got a 5-foot aggregate setback where we'll incorporate landscaping and other vegetation and trees and so forth to break down the mass of the building. So there was a grading plan. I don't know if that's the next sheet or not on your set. Maybe not. Nope. We did a preliminary grading and drainage plan. It really just identifies some of the grading. It was pretty minimal in terms, let me see if I can find it on my end. Yeah, I've got it right here. Just in terms of grading, we had about 150 cubic yards of cut and about 650 cubic yards of fill. And that's under the building footprint, and then about 80 cut and 20 fill on outside the footprint. There'll be about 440 cubic yards of import. And then this just identifies, you don't have this drawing, I guess, in your set, but this just identifies us as a tier 4 swamp for the project. So a lot of mitigation measures we'll have to do with the stormwater management on this project. So I'll bring it back to the board for questions and let me know what, if you have any further questions for us.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will open public comment for this item. If anybody out there in the public would like to address the board regarding this project, you can follow the instructions on screen and let us know if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do see some members of the public have logged in and raised their hand to speak. The first person who would like to speak on this item is Mr. Clausen. Mr. Clausen, I am going to unmute you, and you'll need to unmute yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. Thank you, Chair Moore, and to the board. Earlier today, I sent a written correspondence with a lot of details, and I see that is posted on publicly, and so I'm not going to belabor those points, but I do want to compliment the applicant for. I understand that this pre-app review is required for an AUD project, but I don't think the board often gets this sort of early information about the applicant's thinking. All too often, I think the board gets vanilla boxes, and then at some later date, after all of their comments, a named partner of the firm will come in and act as the white knight and take all the credit for making changes that might have been in the works all along. I do, though, want to mention a couple of things. One is the existence of the Haley Mopus design guidelines. I think those could serve as a good reference for some of the details on this building. They're not so restricted to Spanish colonial revival like the EPV. There's more latitude for an architect to work with. And then I also noticed that there's another bit of public correspondence that's available online from a resident, a nearby neighbor whom I don't know, who's asking for story poles. Of course, story poles would be required for an AUD building of this height. But those two things, just keep the Haley-Milpas guidelines in mind and keep the down the way requirement for story poles. Thanks very much to the applicant, to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, we do have Ms. Saley who would like to speak on this item. Ms. Saley, I have unmuted you. You'll need to unmute yourself and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. To begin, let me say that I like the proposed architectural style of this building and feel it's appropriate for this neighborhood. However, I am concerned about the height, which appears to be 45 feet, although only the parapet height is given on the plan, so I'm guessing. As you know, if this were entirely a residential project, there would be increased setbacks along Haley and Santa Barbara streets. So while 77% of the square footage is proposed for residential use, the project includes commercial uses, so the ground floor is sitting close to the property lines, which makes the building look taller and larger. This neighborhood is mostly low-scale 1- and 2-story buildings, and this tall of a structure sitting this close to the street may be too much. We all know that FAR is just a number and doesn't always tell the whole story. If my math is correct, the FAR is about 1.3, which is surprisingly low given the 48 dwelling units per acre and the appearance of the Haley and Santa Barbara Street elevations. Looking at the site plan, the interior of the project has the open space, which is great for future tenants, but it's not great for pedestrians and the thousands of cars that drive up Santa Barbara Street every day. Increasing setbacks at street level and the upper levels would help to reduce the apparent size of the building, likely without having to sacrifice any units. Finally, as with the previous speaker and another letter writer, I really think a 4-story project on this busy arterial street in this neighborhood deserves story poles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, I don't see that anybody else has joined the webinar and raised their hand indicating they'd like to speak on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence on this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did receive written correspondence from Michael Jones and Richard Clausen, which was distributed to the board before this meeting. Back to you, board members.
Okay, thank you. Then we will close public comment and move to questions from the board. Who would like to start? No questions. Okay, Mr. Whalen.
Oh, sure, I'll start. Mr. Aro, could you tell us the height of the ground floor and as it is differentiated from the upper floors?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Now we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I lost my AirPods halfway through here. I'm sorry, Chair Moore and Board Member Whelan, can you please repeat your question?
Sure, Mr. Arl. My question was as to the height of the ground floor and as it is differentiated from the upper floor heights.
Yeah, we're doing about a 12-foot clear on the ground floor. So it would probably be 13-ish floor to floor, or ground to floor, first floor, or sorry, second floor.
So, so it is different by 1 foot?
Yeah, so the commercial space will have a taller ceiling in it. We usually do about 11.5 to 12 feet clear. So from ground floor to second floor would be about 13 feet roughly.
Very good. Thank you. And how do you envision the pool sitting above the units below? Is it raised on the third floor, or is it flush with the third floor and inhabits some of the second floor space?
Yeah, if you can see, it's a little hard to read, but the pool is actually elevated above the roof deck of the third floor. So there's a ramp there that elevates, that you can see from right to left, that would get you up to the pool deck area.
All right, so the bathrooms are also at that same pool deck level, or that gym and NPR, those are all at the same level?
Yes.
All right then. And so the podium on the second floor is, you described it as a courtyard, and I can see that, but as it is now, it looks to be just a pass-through for pedestrians. What is do you have any a vision for what this courtyard podium might be?
Chair Moore and Board Member Whelan, thanks for the question. We're still programming that. We're very early stages. Our initial thinking was that we wanted to try to get as many raised planters and opportunities for collecting stormwater. So as this project moves forward and develops, certainly we will get a little bit more programmed spaces in that area.
All right then. A couple of other questions, if the committee will indulge me. I take it that the garage is fully mechanically ventilated. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And could you talk about your strategy or alternatives for location of the driveway to the garage? Why was that chosen over other alternatives, say?
Chair Moore and Board Member Whelan, we've gone around and around on this. We actually had it further north on Santa Barbara Street, and we also had it where we had a in and out. So come in off of Haley and come out off of Santa Barbara Street. We've looked at it various different ways. My office is about 2 blocks down the road here on Haley Street, and Haley's a pretty busy street, and so can Santa Barbara Street be, but Haley seems a little bit less opportune to come through that intersection and then hit a turn or an entry point into this building, given the dimension of the site. So we opted for an in and out on Santa Barbara Street, as it has a little bit less, I don't know, Haley Street's like a drag strip during the day, so Santa Barbara Street seems a little bit quieter. So that was our initial thinking.
Thank you. And my final question, how, in your own words, how does this building respond to the neighborhood that is across the street and adjacent to the north, specifically to that building to the north? Does the face on the Santa Barbara facade align with the building to the north?
Are you referring to the brick building?
Yes.
The brick building is set back quite a bit further on that, just north of our property. We're about a 5-foot setback. I think that building is maybe 10, or maybe even further. It's quite a bit set back on that side of the street. And it's also a single-story brick building. So we're definitely a different style building, a different type of program altogether. Across the street, across Santa Barbara Street, there's a lot of 1 and 2 story residential properties that are, some are commercially used, others are residences. And to the south across Haley, we've got the old tent merchant building, which is currently being leased out. So it's definitely a little bit different than what's around it. It's a little bit more consistent with the property at 219 Haley that's being developed in the near future. And Haley's going through a bit of a transformation. We've been down here about 8 years, so the whole street's kind of going through a new transition of sorts.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Moore. First, a question to staff. I don't know whether they'll be able to answer right now, but part of our findings for neighborhood compatibility is that projects don't significantly impact public scenic views. I just want to confirm that either going east on Haley or going north on Santa Barbara Street is not considered a designated public view.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. At this time, unsure of the answer of that question. I'll make sure to elevate it to the planner who will be responsible for this project.
All right, thank you. So back to the applicant. I noticed on the site plan that there is, and you can see it here also, on the site plan, you have looks like a 5-foot setback on Santa Barbara and Haley. Is that but there are portions of the building that come right out to the property line above. Can you explain? I guess that is there a required setback there, or is this a setback by choice? Why isn't it planted? And how can you, if it is a required setback, how can you take the upper floors and bring them right out to the property line?
Chair Moore and Board Member Six, we have a variable setback here, so we can push and pull. So we can come out to the setback line at one point, as long as we pull back on another point. In this drawing, we're showing a 5-foot setback and areas where it cuts in and out a little bit, but we would intend to landscape those areas as well, except for entries to the commercial spaces in the future.
So is it a required average of 5, or is it by choice of 5?
It's a required variable setback.
Okay, very good, thanks. So you have other portions on the upper floor that create your averages to back to the 5, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On this sheet, your elevator, I don't know what the EE is, but the elevator, is there a entry to the elevator on the Haley side?
No, there is not. It's access from the garage side.
So what does that EE stand for? Oh, equipment, I got it. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
If we could go, right here, is there, I see on the elevations, I note here that the trash area for the commercial and the whole project is indicated in one of these yellow squares. But there doesn't appear to be any developed pathway for the bins to come out to the street. Is that what happens? The Marburg would stop at the street and roll these things out, so that's just to be developed.
Chair Moore, Board Member 6, yeah, right now it's a placeholder. We're so early in this stage here, but yes, we would certainly be working that out down the road.
And you said in your opening remarks that the site's toxic condition has been mitigated. Would that, 219 was not able to go into the ground at any, even a foot to 2 feet lower in grade to the street. I recognize it has all problems with handicap, but is the mitigation of the site to the point where there could be feasibly some excavation to lower the parking level?
Chair Moore, Board Member 6, my understanding is that we're going grade level and up, that we can't go down any lower than where we're at based on the soils. It has been cleaned, but we're not intending to go down at all on this project.
So there's no green light. It's not clean enough that excavation could be entertained.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Could we go to either the second floor or to the roof plan? So did you, one of the comments, and I resonate with it, is that there could be a possibility of collapsing the width a bit. Everything has to be done in balance, but collapsing the width of the interior courtyard from balcony edge to balcony edge in order to introduce more setback at the street, in particular in these middle 7 units. Was that studied, and how did you come upon, or would you be comfortable in entertaining collapsing these a bit, the width of that interior courtyard?
We've looked at a number of different alternatives on this site and different ways to break down the mass. One of the things that we really studied was the next floor up, the 3rd floor, where we have created breaks in the building.
Can we go there?
We would be amenable to studying the setbacks of the building in various ways, but we're still trying to maximize light and air down through the core of the courtyard and around the exterior of the building. So,
do you know what that dimension from balcony edge to balcony edge, vertically up and down sheet is?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What's the width from balcony edge to balcony edge of the main opening down to the podium?
Let's see, I don't have that in my head right now, sorry. I believe it's about 25 feet.
Okay. Okay. Can we go to the roof plan? I don't quite, and Mr. Whelan, Board Member Whelan addressed this, but I see what looks like one dimensional ramp. Don't you have to, where you go up, you have to go down? Or where you go down, you have to come up? Wouldn't there be a opposite ramp?
I think we have a ramp missing, but we can work that out for sure.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple questions if nobody else is itching to go. So, Mr. Arel, can you tell us what is the length of the parcel along Santa Barbara Street?
Oh, give me 1 second. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can find it here.
It's pretty long. I guess my question has to do with how the project will sit in grade. So obviously Santa Barbara Street slopes down towards the ocean. And over that length, it's going to be a fairly significant difference from top to bottom. So tell me so I imagine your 0-0 or your flush transitions are at the commercial spaces. How does the project then respond in section to that height change? Does the project step down, or is it a combination of stepping and sloping the parking level? And then does that mean the project is taller at one end than the other? And so what is I guess my question is, that overall height dimension, is that taken at what's anticipated to be the most extreme height at the Haley end? Or how does that all work out in your mind?
Chair Moore, to answer your question, the length of the project or the property line along Santa Barbara Street is about 270 feet. The site is pretty flat. You start to gain elevation as you get a little bit further up the street, but there may be a foot or two difference. And I would imagine as we develop that with topography maps and things of that nature, that we would either probably step the building down slightly, like you would see along State Street and other areas. It is fairly flat though, from my recollection of walking the site.
Okay, so the intent is that if we go to the elevation views, the intent is that, I guess, the East Haley elevation would describe the intended heights that you're hoping to reach.
Yes.
If we could zoom in on those elevation heights. So we have 38'6" at the top of parapet, and then the other roof forms beyond. One is the elevator, and then what else is back there? There's some residential units on the right-hand side, and then what's on the left again?
On the left, let's see, on the right, residential units. On the left, we don't have any, we don't have a lot of mass over there. We've got the little gym and the little fitness area that would be over there. So, but I think that mass would come down, actually. I don't think it would be that high.
Okay. So what is the overall height of the uppermost residential units? Is that 45 feet? Is that shown somewhere?
I don't see it on here. It should be on here, but let's see. Let's see if I can pull this up.
If we scroll down to the other elevation, maybe there's something there.
In here. We're probably around 45 feet, would be my guess. Just looking at this elevation.
Okay. The pool and the gym and those amenities, are they something that would be, that the ownership really wants and thinks that the project needs, or is it just a element that would be nice to have?
No, it's part of the program development of the project to have these areas as amenities for the tenants.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Anybody else? Vice Chair
Chair Moore?
Six, go ahead.
I forgot one question. It's, if we go to the site plan, it seems that there, and especially in the context of this neighborhood, there seems to be a lot of commercial space that may or may not be utilized. Was there any study of perhaps introducing more residential on the ground floor, like a small little covered courtyard on the very side property line, sneak in a couple units on the north and east lines at street level, or any other creative ideas to find much needed residential rather than suspect, not so much needed commercial.
Chair Moore and Board Member Six, we did not study any ground floor residential on this project. I know that there's some residential across the street, some of which is being used for commercial, but this area is largely commercial in nature. And just having been down here for so long, I don't know if I would want a unit on the street on Haley, to be honest. So it's just not something that we studied on this project. We prefer to keep commercial scope in there that could either be used for the tenant use or for tenant use or what have you.
Right, thank you. I mean, could the pool occupy one of these commercial areas?
Chair Moore and Member Six, I don't see it being viable if we put a pool down there, unless it was an indoor pool, which seems kind of an odd thing to do in Santa Barbara. But I would prefer to keep that in an area where people get more use out of it and be more available to sun and views.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
I had a quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
If the applicant could please just clarify, the entrance into the parking on this plan is the ingress egress, is it only from that Santa Barbara access?
Chair Moore and Member Nunn, yes, it's just that one ingress and egress at the same point along Santa Barbara Street.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Right. Okay, last chance. We'll remove the comments. Any other questions? Okay. Let's go to comments, please. So remember that this is a pre-app, so we want to try and give higher level comments about size, bulk, scale, neighborhood compatibility, any concerns that you have over how a project might fit within the guidelines, and all of those sorts of things. Let's not get too into the details yet. Try and think big picture, please. Okay, who'd like to start? And you can just go ahead and list your comments. As you recall, we don't need a motion, so this will just be a summary of everybody's comments. Nobody wants to jump in? All right, Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
All right, I'll start us off. I think the simplified contemporary Spanish style is appropriate for the neighborhood. I think there needs to be some further study for the garage entry location along Santa Barbara Street and possible of your mechanical space with versus commercial space on the Santa Barbara Street side. I think that we can also possibly study stepping the commercial spaces back to allow more landscape on the ground floor, as well as some of the setbacks at the second and third floors. Overall, I think it's a really efficient layout. And I do agree that there can be further study with reducing the size of the courtyard, although I understand you're trying to get airflow and sunlight to all of the units. And I think updating the plans to reflect the correct heights would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go.
Mr. Six, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Noon.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Six. I'll be quick. I concur. I think the project does fit the neighborhood. I did want to make one comment also regarding the entry. Not to get into the detail too much, but just to study that a little bit since we're talking about distance and setbacks. That seemed just a little harsh. For people walking by along the sidewalk. So that would be my only comment about the more detail. But I do like the direction the project is going.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Six.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. I think that the architecture presented is working and would fit in with Haley Milpas guidelines. I think that so it's successful that way. I think that the massing is these type of projects need to be studied very carefully and do due diligence on massing efforts. So I would recommend the following: is that one study the collapsing of the width of the internal space in order to receive more setbacks on the second, third, and fourth floors. That being one. Second, I think the way the building's divided with the significant indents and circulation provided at the corners, that we see it here, this corner mass and the mass up on northwest corner, and maybe even the mass at the southeast corner. Those could be, can we go to the elevations? Those could be designed in a very different, in a different style, in a different color and material, using different colors and materials in order to take the length of this building and only have the length of the building in between the stair indents that we see on right and left hand side of the Santa Barbara elevation. Again, I think there might be too much commercial. It would be great to see one or two units tucked discreetly and on the side elevations, side property lines. I think to Mr. Chair Moore's point. I think that any elevational change should be dug down instead of raised with the slope, if any, on Santa Barbara Street. If we yeah, this elevation here, I think it would be stronger. I think you have some flexibility in your widths and rhythm of your commercials. It seems that there's an interrupt of the void and solids along the Santa Barbara elevation, that those voids and solids could continue down. And so where these balconies above are aligning between the solid masses, that maybe that's more, that rhythm is reflected more in the lower on the first floor. If we go to the site plan, I think that when we talk about walkability, I see that there's a tremendous missed opportunity where the elevator is located. That should be a walkthrough, and some walkability into the stairway and into the parking from Santa Barbara Street. And I think one has to be careful when we look at this again, is that if and when a like-sized similar project is developed directly to the north, what does that environment between the two projects look like? And what kind of spaces and setbacks and breathing room do we have from neighbors facing each other? I think that's about it.
Okay. Anything, Mr. Black, anything to add?
I think for the most part, I would agree with most of the comments that have been made. I just can't help but think this is going to have a significant impact visually on the neighborhood. I'm thinking about that row of small 1- and 2-story little bungalow structures directly across on Santa Barbara Street, the impact that it's going to have on those. And I'm still not convinced that architecturally there's strong compatibility with the neighborhood. I was a little troubled when I looked at that one elevation, and I just saw a couple of snippets of red tile, and I just thought, well, could you provide a little bit more to kind of give it a little bit more continuity in terms of this Spanish style, but because I just saw 2 sort of shed roofs, there, and I just thought, well, couldn't there be more to sort of create a little bit more design continuity for that? But that's just an observation on my part. As far as the garage entrance, I don't, you're either going to have to come off Santa Barbara or Haley, and I think the applicant has made the case that Santa Barbara Street entry is going to be much more suitable given the amount of traffic and stuff. So I would sort of agree with what's being shown here in terms of its location. And those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Whalen, go ahead.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up on a couple of Mr. Black's. I too am doubtful and hesitant about the compatibility with the adjacent residential properties across the street. And a thought of Mr. Six's, I would like to see some variation in the massing and fenestration along Santa Barbara Street to be more in character with Santa Barbara style. And as Mr. Black said, some more glimpses of red tile roofs. And as far as the massing, the applicant might consider studying the corner unit, I'm just sort of doubtful that a viable public space would be there on the third floor. Perhaps this is, in urban terms, this is a better place for a place marker, some kind of vertical element or a tower. And as the illustration shows, the 3D illustration, the presence of the planting materials, I think, works against, I'm sorry, Mr. Bolton, I don't remember which image is the 3D rendering of the corner. The plantings on these second and third and fourth floors seem to work against this Spanish colonial revival, or shall we say, a sense of place here in Santa Barbara. I would encourage the designers to really bear that in mind. I was at a disadvantage because I could not get that the guideline PDF to open. So I'm at a disadvantage for not knowing really what's in there. I think that's all of my comments. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've heard, Mr. Noon, did we hear from you? I think we did.
Yes, yes, I commented, yep.
Okay. Yeah, okay, great. Well, my own comments are fairly in line with Vice Chair 6. I think that overall the design intent, I think, is appropriate as far as the aesthetics. I think it's appropriate. I think the case could definitely be made that it fits the intent of the Haley Street guidelines. And I think the aesthetics presented here are quite nice. I would ask the applicant to study the grade and the grading. So I think there is a significant change in elevation from one end to the other of the project. That's definitely going to cause some issues. And I would ask that in the future, the applicant also provide elevations of the other sides of the building so we can see how this building makes space for future projects around it, as well as for the existing occupants of the site next door. In other projects, we've asked the applicants to provide some relief along the property line that goes down to grade so that other planting could be introduced, or just a setback at grade to allow for some reduction in the extent of the wall of the podium along the property lines. And I, for one, am not totally sold on the idea that projects like these, every project like this needs a gym and a pool and other amenities that end up creating additional mass. And part of living in an urban location is that you do have access to gyms and other open space. So I'm not sure that they need to be included in a project like this. And the locations of those are driving the project to be larger in mass. So those are my comments. Anybody have anything else they want to add? Yes, Vice Chair 6.
Just a minor, looking at this elevation, I think that, the idea of the 2 stories only at blocks at the corners is a good idea, but the trellis coming out absolute to the extent of the property lines is defeating that purpose. Either no trellis or a trellis way back, or even as I think Mr. Whalen was going, maybe this is a rooftop. down to a reasonable eave height. But the way it's designed now with these extensive trellises defeating that important purpose.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if that's everybody's comments, believe, unless our secretary has any questions for us or clarifications she needs, and staff has what it needs.
Yeah, I think I got
ahead.
everything. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, then we'll do it for this item. Okay, everybody, thank you very much to the applicant and the team, the applicant team. And with that, we can adjourn our ABR review for September 20th. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, applicant.